All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would someone move item 1.02, please?
Move it.
Second.
Is there any discussion, anything to be amended, Mr. Polvino? Are we good?
There are two amendments that probably already show, but 6.02 added a individual's name, Donna Cohn. And on the executive session, you had superintendent evaluation completion added to the document.
Okay, if there's nothing else, no other discussion, Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Okay, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore.
Yes.
And for anyone that has joined us this evening, I would like to remind you that if you have a comment or question, you may submit that to the board via our email, clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. You can find that email address on the district website, and someone will get back to you as soon as it's practicable. Now I'll move on to item 1.04.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore.
Yes.
Item 1.05.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore.
Abstain.
Are there any questions regarding upcoming meetings under the president's report? And just as, since you didn't hear me, the NISBA convention, there is no virtual option this year. It is all in person. All right, if there's no questions, I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Polvino.
Good evening, everyone. Hope all are well. We'll get started. Once again, I always like to start by thanking our staff and students and our families for all their flexibility. It's hard to believe that next week we are in June. That's 9 months that we've been going through this, and you add on that additional 6. It's been 15 long months, and it's good to see things kind of opening up and moving forward. Also, with our event this morning at the high school, I want to thank the police department for working so closely, the staff and the students for their flexibility. I know that we forwarded a letter to the community as well as to the board. The 2 individuals have been questioned, apprehended, and the investigation continues. Building is ready to roll for tomorrow. Are there any questions on that? Didn't think I'd be looking at something like that when the phone rang this morning at 5:30. And so, but again, thank you. And in a way, we've learned a lot through remote, not the kind of reason why I want to do that. So we're also looking at some different systems and procedures just to further hone in on supervision in the evenings there at the school. So any questions about that? Alrighty, capital improvement project. I'm not sure if the resolution's on there or not now that I look, but we did award, we had a bid opening on Tuesday, this past Tuesday for the electrical bid for the fire alarms for Granby, GRB, and Lanigan. We ended up with 7 bids. The top bid actually pulled their bid because they had a mathematical error. I really liked it. I guess they did not. So they pulled their bid, and the second bid came in, a very reasonable bid. I also want to say about LaChase as well as King & King. They had made ballpark figures as being our architects as well as our construction managers. And this bid came in well within the range and actually at the low end about where they thought they'd be. So we're looking forward to that. And we'll bring that resolution to you I can't remember. I don't see it on there tonight, but it will be on there at the next meeting. If it's not on there tonight, I just can't look at that far out. So good news. That means we'll start working on those projects in the near future. So, and then we have a meeting, a construction management meeting this Friday, and we will. Part of that is to prepare for our June 8th presentation, update to the board with respect to Phase 2C work and recommendations that we're making as well at that point in time. So looking forward to the next couple of weeks as we continue on our projects. And then the site work, we're looking at shovels in the ground, finishing up the work at Lanigan, as well as shovels in the ground at the junior high in Balney come the end of June. So quickly the time is approaching. So a lot of exciting times here in Fulton with our capital project, even in the midst of some challenging times that we're coming out of. Any questions with respect to the capital? Thank you for all your support in that area. Next will be, and Dan, if you could pull up the report, go to the very last page. And I say, why are we starting on the last page? Well, on the last page is the monthly Fulton City School District 2020-21 budget report. So it's on the last page of the federal stimulus update. So if you could go to that, Dan, and if you can't, I can get there. And then I'll turn it over to Kathy Nichols and Dom Lisi. So it'll be the very last slide in the deck. Thank you. Kathy and Dom.
Okay, well, this is our monthly financial statement showing year to date through the end of April. And again, just a reminder, to the left shows the prior year and to the right shows the current year. So right now with revenues overall, we're right where we expected to be, very close to where we were as far as a percentage of the budget collected. And so no real surprises right there. Under expenditures, again, nothing terribly exciting to report. Salaries are in line with our budget and very similar to the amount spent last year at 71.78% compared to almost 71% this year. Our benefits are still, as of the end of April, we're still trending favorably. There will be some year-end adjustments, but I believe we'll still be under budget on that. The supply spending right now is a little bit low compared to last year, but we're just gearing up now in May to get all the teacher classroom purchases for next year, entered and get them ordered so we can receive them by the end of the school year, so they're all set for next year. So overall, pretty much a quiet, as expected month. So any questions on anything that you see there? All right, well, that's about all I really had to present on that, unless someone else has something to add. Turn it back over to you.
One of the things that we're watching very closely, and Jerry, please pop in at Ultimate, with monitoring our benefits, our health benefits very closely. They're riding very, very nicely, and we've had a very good year that way. However, we do have some high-cost cases that they're really looking at, and we're fortunate to work with ENV, and I know that team is working on really trying to get a better handle on where those may forecast out. It's just something for us. We're keeping an eye on current cases, and some cases go over those thresholds, and so we're monitoring closely. Anything you'd add to that, Jerry, or did I capture that?
No, you captured that very well. It's one of those ongoing processes of monitoring where we are and those potential high cost situations that we might face down the road.
Yeah, it's more of a 21, 22 that we're monitoring. 2021, we're looking good because we know those expenditures right now. We got a pretty good handle, but there are a handful of cases out there. And so we're working very closely with them to monitor those. So again, blessed to have a great year this year with our health benefits. Our dental's just a little bit above, but the health benefits are looking good at this point. But again, already looking and forecasting forward with them. So thank you. Any other questions about the monthly budget report? All righty. Dan, can you take us to the first slide, please, of this deck? So what we're looking at is our federal stimulus funds update. And to just give you a bit of a timeline, the CRRSA is June 15th. We have to make a submission. ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan, is July 1st. But I'll comment more as we're going along. So there's a bit of a expedited time frames, but I did get good news yesterday. It looks like there is opportunities to update those plans and kind of redirect, after you get out of the gate at the beginning of the year. So if you could go on to the next slide, and one of the things we always want to talk about is that no matter what funds we're using, whether it's our own local funds, our funds from New York State, or federal funds, our mission and our vision are at the center of everything we do, and every choice that we make and every decision we make should lead us toward attainment of our mission and vision. Next slide, please. Also, our beliefs and our guiding principles are always at the center of our decision making, and this has been very consistent for us over the last 3 years, as well as our strategic coherence plan. Next slide. Just our reminders for what coherence is, and for me, it's about that collective commitment that we're sticking together, that we're making sure that we don't have things in silos, but there are connections from having a very clear direction with everything that we do, that we cultivate understanding and collaboration, that we deepen our understanding and our learning, and that we're always measuring our progress and making sure that we're staying on point and moving forward and making adjustments and then coming back around that wheel again. So it really is imperative. Yesterday, I will say I had the opportunity to speak with the New York State Education Commissioner. It was an outstanding conversation. We are a member of the Small City School Districts Association, as you are aware. Fulton's always been a very active member. As a representative, I'm on the board of directors, following in my predecessor's footsteps. I've been able to, we're very active. And it was a very good open conversation with the commissioner yesterday. And after I got done talking, she talked about that we had, I had been very specific around long-range planning, sustainability, and capacity. And I think the last 20 minutes to a half an hour of the conversation, she talked a lot about sustainability and capacity and the importance of districts, not only looking in the short term as we transition kids back in, but also, 10 years from now, being able to look in the rearview mirror and look at what we accomplished and the foundations that we've put in place to ensure that we can take our district and all of our students to the next level. So it was a great conversation yesterday, and I want to thank the board for continuing to reinforce the importance since the day I started here, the importance of the small cities, and it's a great organization. So it was a great opportunity to share ideas. Our SCP areas are our strategic coherence plan areas. These are the budget parameters that we used this year when we were building our general fund budget that was just recently approved. And thank you to all of our voters, our constituents, everybody who supported our plan. And we will maximize every dollar that you've afforded and approved and allocated to our district. So thank you. And as we develop these plans around the federal monies, you'll see us really stay very connected to these 6 areas of leadership, literacy, instruction, social, emotional, developmental health, family engagement, innovation, and actually a 7th, which is health and safety. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, and again, the thank you for the ratification of our budget last week. Thank you to our board and everyone in our community for supporting. And I believe we came in at about 78% passing. So thank you so much. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background information that we've really pulled together from some NISCUS information. It really just provides you a background. So the ESSER 2, or the CRRSAA, which is the Corona Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, was enacted in December 2020. And then the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, was enacted in March 2021. So one was from the previous administration. The second was from our current presidential administration. Those are the high numbers of what was shared with school districts across the country. Next slide, please. The key highlights, and NISCUS really put this together. It's a lot of money. It's the equivalent of 12% of the total general fund expenditures for a typical district. So For us, you'll see it's 14 million out of a 76 million if compared to a $76 million budget. So it's a strong figure. We're right in that general area. It's not permanent. I think this is an important piece that we have to remember, that we must obligate by September 30th, 2023 for the CRRSAA, and for ARPA or the American Rescue Plan, we have to obligate by September 30th, 2024. However, there's some more expedited timeframes initially. Those are the kind of the end dates for the allocation, utilization of the monies. And it comes with strings. There are specific parameters and expectations. Next line.
Brian, could you
Yes.
could you explain what you mean by obligate?
So the districts must obligate. So in other words, we have to have the money encumbered, if you will, and obligated for through that year. So by September 30th, 2024, we have to be obligated about how that money is going to be spent for the remainder of that year.
And does that require approval, Brian? So we're going to submit our plan for how we want to use the money. Does that plan require approval?
So the plans will be posted on the website. We send the FS10s, or the frameworks for the money, the actual areas and where the expenditures are going to be by line. Those are what will be approved by New York State Education Department. So the plans are living documents. They will be placed on our website. Ongoing feedback, very similar to what we did with our reopening plan early on, getting feedback quarterly. I think we learned a lot in that approach. I think it allowed us to get feedback from our community. So that plan is my understanding. I felt better about it yesterday. There's a requirement that every 6 months that it's reviewed. I actually indicated I felt it should be more like 3 months, because the initial money has to be distributed and allocated to districts, the CRRSA money, by January 5th, 2022. So in other words, any monies that aren't allocated to school districts actually goes back to the federal government. So we have to make sure that every school district's plan, in this case Fulton, we want to be approved, and we want our money allocated to us. My guess is they'll say it has to stay in the same buckets, but we probably can adjust within those buckets of monies. More information will be coming forthright on that.
I appreciate that. I know that there are some folks were misunderstanding what this money meant and thought that it was just a chunk of money we could spend.
No,
however,
there's parameters. We'll go through those over the next couple of slides.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. The applications, just so you'll know, for the application in the portal for the CRRSA, that's the initial monies from the December, the former presidential administration. We received that on May 10th. The applications are due by June 15th. That's in process. For the ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan, they quickly said you had to fill out an application online May 24th, because they've had the money for 60 days in New York State. And so they immediately got something out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We had to go into the portal. There were, I believe, 21 or 22 assurances that we had to say, yes, we'll do that. It's from, we will do the proper reporting. We'll follow all the steps. It just goes on through. My favorite one is you will not talk on the text or talk on the phone while you're driving. That was actually one of the assurances, because you're using federal funds. So in other words, if you bought your phone through federal funds, you shouldn't be using it illegally. So I thought that was one of the assurances. So there's a range of things on there. So we have done that. That is completed, and it was approved. So that is done. Basically, it was answer yes to all the questions, making sure that, and we'll be able to address all of those assurances as required. Next slide, please. New York is receiving $8.98 billion. So this just lets you know that 90%, just again, gives you the talking points you may want as a board. Just as a high level, this is kind of how it came to New York State. So now allocated to school districts and charter schools. And then by federal law, we're required to use 20% to address learning loss. And with the remaining 10%, the state is required to reserve at least 5% to address learning loss, and 1% for summer enrichment, and 1% for after-school programs. So you'll see in a minute what that means for Fulton. Next slide, please. So this slide really captures the essence. So in the blue, and we got this from the New York State Council of Superintendents, and it is accurate. The CRRSAA, this is the previous administration, if you will, that December allocation from the federal is 4.256 million. And we didn't have any discretionary funds pulled, so that money is 4.256277. This is the plan that we have to have in for June 15th. On the left to the right, you'll say, gee, all the way to the right, it says $10,258,994 of American Rescue Plan. That's absolutely true in total. However, if you move to the left again, so I'll move you left to right, in the first yellow line, that's our total ARPA, our ARPA ESSER 3 allocation is 9.558. Why? And then it says in the next line, 1.911799, thanks, Dan, that says that's the 20%. So we've got to make sure that at least that minimum amount is allocated in addressing learning loss. And then the maximum available for other uses under ARP is 7.647 million. Now this is where these grants, these learning loss grants, if you remember on the last slide, I said that the state kept 5%, 1%, 1%. Well, here's the rest of our 10.2 million. 700,000 was taken out by the state. And to do that, they said, all right, here's the 1% for state level reserve for summer enrichment, $100,002. So we have to fill out a separate grant and allocation for that money. Even though it's allocated, we got to do a special grant because that's what the way this is driven, we have to do that. On the second line for that 100,000, we got to put together a little bit of a package for this one. And this is the after school. The good news is we have a plan already for summer programs that will probably be well over the 100. And we have a good plan in place for the reserve of after school. We've already been talking about that. We can build on. So those are good things. And then the state level reserve for learning loss, again, 499,996, that adds up to the 700,000 and takes us to the 10,258,000. So, you know, it's the way it was distributed by the federal government, the ARP, with the allocations being reserved by the state. So in the end, we end up with 10,258,000. Add that to the 4,256, and that's where you end up with our total of 14 million. If the math is somewhere around 600, almost 700,000.
Brian,
So there's a lot of information there. So questions?
yes, I have one. What is this? What do we have a start date when we will be able to use the funds?
So obviously, if you go back and you read the allocations, it might be on the next slide. I can't remember. Let me see here. Just a quick look on my slide here. Yeah, that's a great. You're a prophet, Miss Lyons. It actually brought us right to the next slide. That's perfect. So this talks about the actual timelines. So you can actually apply these monies, which we are not going to do. We're gonna really look at July 1st, 2021, because we were able to. Our budget's looking good right now. The CARES money, which was the first ESSER, that's the previous monies. We look good through. If everything continues as you saw a few minutes ago, through June 30th, 2020, we should be good. So we're really looking at this money will be July 1st, 2021 right now, and then moving forward. So you can see where the money can be applied from March 13th, 2020 through September 30th, 2023. So that's the CRRSA. All right. So that answers your question. So technically the money is available now, but we have to get our applications approved. We have to get all those things. It was interesting. One of the things the commissioner says, obviously do a good job, do a broad, comprehensive job, but at the same time, don't sweat it, if you will, because you're going to have opportunities to adjust that. So what we want to do is we want to be able to maximize this 4,256,000. As you'll see on the next slide, this one ends 23. The next one is 24. And so what's important on that is, so what that says to me is make sure we do a really good job with CRRSA in year 1 and 2. Make sure we're spending all those monies. And then in 1, 2, 3, and 4, work with the ARP so that we maximize all those funds. As you can see, the ARP goes through 24, but it also goes back to March of 2020, which again, we're not going to go back that far. So we're really looking at this federal July 1st forward, remembering that American Rescue Plan carries 1 year longer.
You also talked about that this being a grant, did I understand
So
that?
if you go back, Dan, can you go back a couple of slides, please, to the three color? Yeah, that one. If you go back one more slide, you can see at the second bullet where it talks about that the state had to give us 90% to all the school districts. See that first bullet? In the second bullet, the little open bullet, it talks about that the state was required to keep 10%. The state had to reserve 5% for learning loss. That's our $499,994. And then 1% for summer enrichment and 1% for school programs. That's that next slide. That's the $100,002. So in other words, they had a requirement in the federal monies that came back that said the state had to reserve these monies. But as you can see, those are our allocations that we just need to make sure that we address those in that. And right now we're just waiting on how do we get that? Are they going to put it in the whole plan, or are they going to ask us to do a little bit of a separate plan with that? As you know, we've already started on our summer programming work. And if we get the New York State grant that we applied for, that's one way we can work on that. If not, we'll slide this right into CRRSA and ARP and we'll go that direction. So we'll have no problem meeting any of those 511% at all. And we won't have any issue either with the 20% set aside at 1.911, which would include that 700,000 even, because all three of those would support learning loss. So we look pretty good there. Can you
Brian,
go down 2 slides? Any questions?
Brian, what's the turnaround time for the approval process?
That's a great question. We're hoping it's really quick. They weren't real definitive on that. They had a gentleman, not sure if he's one of the associate commissioners, but he was on the phone call yesterday, and he's in charge of the forms and putting that all together. They're trying to make it as simple as possible. And they're also going to try to turn those around as quickly as possible. So it's sounding better than it normally does.
Is it one complete submission, or are they prioritizing the summer programs that districts are inputting first? Do you know what I mean?
That's not clear, Dave. I think what we want to do is we're going to get in and submit. And then what we'll do is we'll monitor closely. So, if we're done before the 15th, great. It is on rolling admissions. So, if we're done earlier, if we feel really good on the 8th or 9th, after we present to the board on the 8th, if we're feeling pretty good, we can, we could submit earlier to get in the, if you will, into the line quicker. It's always best to be, I'm one that always hit the front of the line ever since I was a little kid. So I don't mind being up front because by being up front, if they had questions or feedback, that would allow us to make adjustments more quickly. So, that's the process right now. So that's what we're hearing from them.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Bring us down to so the 4.2, there's the 10. Are there any questions? These are the general parameters. We have shared these with the board before. These are the areas that we have to focus on. They're rather general. Next slide, please. I won't read through them. As I said, the FS10 or the document, we have to align our plans in each of the areas for funding. I believe there are 15 different lines. They really take into consideration all of these areas. Next slide, please. Keep going, roll it right out. This is kind of a neat slide. It really talks about the plan a little bit. It's the most comprehensive document that I've seen. NISCUS, which is the Superintendent's Association, shared this. I think it, in one slide, captures things quite well. So it talks about prioritizing spending on non-recurring expenses and talks about the safe return of our kids to in-person instruction. Got to be number one, was our number one all year this current year that we're in, and is up front. That's been number one, especially around ARP in that monies that's come in, which is the current administration. The return to students to in-person instruction is one of the highest priorities. Maximizing in-person instruction time, operating schools, meeting the needs of students. So these are all the things that we will have as part of our plan. And the monies will drive the monies to support each one of these areas. I won't go through all of them. Are there any questions on those? But it's a nice kind of slide. They did a nice job capturing the essence on this one. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've talked about before, and I think as a board and as a superintendent, constantly remembering that these monies are one-time monies, and we don't want, so as we manage our general fund budget and that budget, monitor our $76 million budget for 21-22, just like we are right now, monitoring it tightly, presenting to you on a monthly basis. How are we doing? Where are we at? Are there any hot points? Are there any points that are looking just amazing? So we may be able to make a shift. All of those different things we have to make sure. So the way the federal funding came in, it's not a part of the budget in a major way. Originally, the governor wanted $3.85 billion in federal funds. Great news, and thank you to our assemblymen and our senators. The enacted budget only had $140 million in that statewide. That's compared to $3.85 billion. That ensures that we're not heading toward a situation where it was filled with one-time money. So we're pleased by that. And as you know, our foundation aid went up nicely, about $1.4 million this year. And if the state government can do what they plan to do, we will be fully funded in foundation aid in the next 3 years. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that one. Next slide, please. So we're providing a lot of opportunities for stakeholder input. This is a big component. It required components to get as much feedback. It was a part of the reopening plan this year in New York State. As you remember, we did forums, we had surveys, we had videos, we had all sorts of things. We had emailed information, all things. We had reports at almost every single board meeting. So we've been doing sharing at board meetings. You've been hearing about the federal funds early on back in February, March, when we started to get an inkling. Today, you kind of captured, here's where we're at right now with our understanding. So we've got those three things. We'll continue to do that. We've surveyed all of our Fulton City School District bargaining unit members actually last week, and it's still open. I believe we had just over low 200s, Jerry, is that correct?
204. 204. 204.
204. And in there were ratings, including also an opportunity for open-ended responses. The responses are very consistent with our areas in our plan, in our strategic coherence plan, actually around the areas of literacy, instruction, social emotional, huge, the innovation, and family engagement. So every one of those areas, very consistent with the comments. You can put them almost in every one of the buckets, which is terrific. And then we put a family survey out, I believe, was it yesterday, Ms. Geithner? And correct me if I'm wrong, 359 was it, or close to?
348 at my last check.
348. So we've had 348 responses from families in less than a day. So we'll continue to collect that information and see where that information falls. As I said, we're taking those ideas, we're looking at all the things that we're starting to work on. We're using our strategic coherence plan as a driver because we had some really good things going on there. We want to build on that. We learned a lot in our reopening plan and throughout the course of the year. All of that information and feedback throughout the course of the year through surveys, all of the feedback that everybody was looking for. We're taking all of that information over the last year and driving that towards driving and developing a plan that really will make sense for us getting open safely and providing all the supports necessary for our teachers and our students to close those gaps and start to make the gains that we were seeing before we went into COVID, especially in the areas of our early reading and our social emotional. We were really getting a lot of traction when COVID hit, and it's allowed us to maintain and grow a bit. But now we have the opportunity to rekindle the energy and get flowing and getting where we need to go with all of our kids next year. We'll continue. Yep, we'll continue the surveys and dialogues throughout the year. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yep. Is there a chance that you can share some of those? I'd like to see what the public has to say, what their concerns are, and our staff too.
Yep. Yeah, Dan or Mr. Carroll, we can pull those comments right off the piece, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Yep. Thank you. And we'll also, I know that we started, we'll be sharing and doing things with our site-based teams, our leadership teams. I'm considering turning the FCSD budget committee, they were terrific, turning them into being also maybe a federal committee. So a little bit of thinking on that. We're still processing on that a bit. We've met with administrators a couple of times, the superintendent's team. We had a bargaining unit president's meeting yesterday. I was on with the commissioner, but Ms. Geithner led that meeting for me yesterday. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire. We'll continue. So this will lead us into the June 15th and the July 1st plans. We'll have those plans posted on the website. We'll have open opportunities. I believe there's a way we'll be able to get feedback on an ongoing basis. You know, people can digest those. As I said, the state gave us some good information yesterday that those plans are living, which is good news. I'll be curious about what kind of parameters they may put on that ability to be flexible. But they were very clear yesterday that they know that we need to be flexible. They know that as we get into this, that we may find new needs from kids. Or needs that our staff needs, our administrators need, we'll see. And then we can make those adjustments so that we can be prepared and build this plan, strong beginning, take a good hold in early October, take a good look at it. I think one of the things we're talking about, and the board may want to, we can discuss at a future meeting, but we're heading into the 3rd year of our strategic coherence plan. It's really the 4th, but it's our 3rd year of doing that plan. This may be the prime opportunity to take hold a little bit, take a look at what our needs are, to update our plan so that plan takes us not only through the use of this reopening, but through and beyond this federal funding. So what it does is it provides us a compass to make sure that we stay on par so that when the federal funds, after we use the $14,700,000 every single nickel, and we maximize every nickel from it, that we continue on our journey to make sure that mission and vision is realized, and that when we get to 10 years from now, that we can reflect back and say, wow, what did we accomplish with these dollars for this district and our kids? And the commissioner said it well yesterday. She said, Brian, you always talk about, you know, if we could just have this extra monies in the small cities, we all talked about that. And she goes, here it is. You have that opportunity. And, you know, I've been in a place where we maximized the dollars and we continued on our journey. And I also looked at sister schools at the same time, and they didn't have the same approach. And a lot of the programs they had ended when the monies ran out. So I've been there and done this a little bit, and I know what it feels like when you can keep going. So I think that's got to be a very important, and I want our board and boards in the future to continue to challenge and ask the questions to make sure we are maintaining the course on this journey. So this is our beginning to gathering a lot of input and continued input into this next part of this journey as we come out of the pandemic and into re-engaging all of our learners in person each and every day. Any questions on this slide? Alrighty, next slide, please. These are some of the areas that are starting to bubble, and you notice they align quite nicely. Leadership, the enhancements and the strengthening of the multi-tier systems of support at all tiers. This is that extra support, that targeted support in academic and social emotional areas. Key, we know that. And you can see it's all over the federal plans required. Enhance and improve the district-wide professional learning communities. This is something that if we learned anything, that this was an area of we thought major strength. What we learned through the pandemic was this became a big strength for us. And a lot of the feedback we've gotten is that this needs to continue and we need to find a way. This is what keeps the rudder deep at the classroom level and keeps that conversation horizontally and vertically going on within schools and across schools. The literacy, we're looking at reading and math interventionists, that extra support to small groups, individual students. Expansion of our letters are in our Ockley, our Oswego County Literacy Initiative, and our language essentials to teaching reading and spelling to upper grade levels. We've actually had more requests, and that's a natural extension. And really, this is all about the science of teaching reading to students. It's huge. And as we shared with you at a previous meeting, our data was looking, we were on our way. That we were looking pretty good in January of 2019, and then we had to take up the reins last spring. Instruction, you've seen the K-12 framework for summer programs this summer. That's a link for you. We shared that at the last board meeting. Additional instructional coaches is an area where we continue to coach up and make sure that our teachers have the support and feedback that they have that's necessary to help them and enhance their, it's just like the coach of any basketball team, football team, debate team. You know, the feedback you get is what makes you stronger. Social, emotional, developmental health, additional direct service support for social emotional needs. That's counseling, small groups, working with our external agencies, for example, to provide more small group counseling, individual counseling for students in all of our schools. Additional support to build staff capacity and wellness. This really gets back to, this is a staff that's, I wouldn't lead another staff. This is an amazing staff. They did an amazing job throughout this. But they're coming back, you know, this has been a long run, and we want to make sure that they have the capacity not only to provide that support in the classroom, but to also take care of themselves, and we can take care of our kids. So it's really building that ability around trauma-informed practices. So it's all of those components that are a part of that package that go along with tier 1 instruction and what's happening for all kids, coupled with those multi-tiered targeted supports for not only students that are struggling, but also students that need those extra challenges as well. The family engagement, expansion of our parent university and our expansion of our community school initiatives, big part of that. This is an area that we continue to try to find ways to engage with our families, to ensure that we close that circle between home and school. And then innovation. We're looking at the pre-K-12 interdisciplinary pathways towards graduation in New York State. I believe there are 47. And again, prior to COVID, we were really starting to expand our career pathways, a lot of different options, our work keys, a lot of different things going on at the high school. But what we have to do is, how do you look at from the 12th grade down to pre-K, how does that look, that pathway going all the way back down into those primary grade levels, so that as we build the other way coming up through, kids are building those skills and knowledge sets. By the time they get to the high school, they'll be prepared to really engage in those pathways at a very different level, which will then prepare them for the knowledge and the skills that they're going to need out in the world of work, out into the world of higher education. And then finally, our health and safety systems, really looking at ventilation, looking at safety practices, what we could do to ensure that as we re-engage, what do we need to do in those areas as well. So that it's a pretty comprehensive piece. We put it under innovation, but that easily could be a category by itself. Are there any questions? This is really our initial targeted areas. You see how they come up. The feedback we're getting aligns very nicely with that. We'll continue to look at the feedback as it comes in over the next week or so as we tighten up and go to the June 8th presentation to the board, which will be cleaner. In each of those areas, we're going to want to start to put out, if I want to say if approved, but I want to say, in anticipation of, posting positions in anticipation approvals, which we're 99.9% assured of, but until it comes in, I don't believe it. So when we get that, that would allow us to be ahead of the game. We know that other districts are already starting and putting it out there, postings, things like that. So we wanted to be able to start posting in anticipation of. I believe there are some staff we have in Fulton that are going to be very interested possibly in some of these opportunities. We're poised nicely to be able to infuse new people into our systems, recognizing the fact that we want to create something that's sustainable and has capacity over time. So there's that upfront, let's get going, let's get rolling, let's do that type of piece, make sure that those supports are in place, and then over time, make sure we're making sure the structures and the systems are in place. Next slide. And the timeline, here we are tonight, June 8th. And the surveys, I didn't put them on there, but the surveys continue. We'll continue collection, that type of thing going on through the 8th. Really through the 8th through the 25th public comment, because you have to remember, we're also developing the ARP plan from the 8th through the 15th through the 1st of July. So we got another plan we're going to be developing. So there's two things kind of going on here at the same time. So the public comment ongoing will help us inform the other plan as we're doing both at the same time and prepare for adjustments in the future. So it's an interesting time, to say the least. We'll submit the final plan no later than June 15th for CRRSA. On June 22nd, we'll share the preliminary draft plan for ARP to the Board of Education. And then by July 1st, we have to submit and post the ARP. And then we're going to have ongoing stakeholder feedback adjustments. We would make those adjustments on the website in the plan. I envision some more surveys, perhaps some forums. Again, we got a lot going on. We're closing a school year, opening summer, and opening fall all at the same time. So there's a lot of things going on. That's a lot of information with a very enthusiastic superintendent tonight. It's an exciting time, but it's also, it's going to be it's an opportunity for us to change the future and the future of many, many thousands of kids' lives, not only in the next school year, but in many beyond. So what a great opportunity that educators and boards don't normally get an opportunity like this. So I look forward to leading us through that. So thank you. Any questions?
Brian, I just have one, and it's completely off the topic, but looking at this slide made me think of it, so I apologize.
Okay.
But we also have to have our public safety plan open for public comment for 30 days as well. Should we do this at the same time to keep the public aware of both plans?
Yep, that's a great, actually, somebody mentioned to me the other day, I think it was Jean Perry mentioned that you had mentioned that. Yes, what we'll do is, one of the things that's interesting about all the different safety plans, if you remember, we had to have the pandemic plan, about 2 months ago, April 1st.
Yes.
And then we've got the district safety plan, and there's other ones, and there were separate templates, separate everything. So we're going to try to make sure they're as consistent as possible. And we're also going to be able to hit, the idea will be, we'll bring it for resolution August 11th. We'll do, these are a lot of dates in my head, but the way we mapped it out, we'll be able to hit the August 11th meeting, and there's a requirement for that document by September 1st. So we're going to try to keep things as in sync as possible.
Nope, that's fine. I just saw the public comment, and it reminded me of the safety one. So I was like,
Yep.
oh, yeah.
And it was good. And I think you bring a good point, is that having 3 different state safety plans, and they're all a little bit different, we're going to try to make sure we replicate and keep them as consistent as possible, because they can get very confusing with a lot of different plans.
Okay, thanks so much. Sorry about that.
No, it really wasn't off target. Goes really well with the innovation, safety, and health section. So perfect.
And can you put that on our calendar, Brian?
Yeah, we mapped out a plan. Ms. Perry, Mr. Lisi, and I mapped out a plan the other day and all the dates, and we'll give that to the board.
Thank you.
And with that, that's the conclusion of the superintendent's report, I believe. Any of my team, anything that I forgot or failed to do this evening? Always a good thing. I never know if that's good or bad. So I hope we did well. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. There's a lot of information, and it's moving fast. Thank you.
All right, I would like to ask my colleagues if you would like to batch items 4.01 through 4.03.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those resolutions? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagor.
Yes. Item 5.01, please.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme. Nick, you muted.
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagor.
Yes.
This brings us to first reading of policies. Are there any comments, questions regarding the, let's see, I think it's 4, 5, 6 policies?
Yeah, Ms. Griffin, if I may, I want to thank the members of the board that serve on that policy committee, as well as all the members of that committee. I believe we brought 112 policies to this board this year. So I don't know if that's a record, but that's a record for me as superintendent. So I just want to thank you. And policy is, I've learned since I became here, is a very important thing that we should always keep at the forefront when we're leading a district. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, Superintendent Polvino, and your committee. This has been an outstanding year, and I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this year and reviewing the number of policies you have. I can't thank you enough. It is a lot of work. It is very important work. And again, it's very near and dear to my heart. And this is the meat and potatoes of what we do here in this district. And it's our guide.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to move on, and I would like to ask my colleagues, are you interested in batching items 6.01 through 6.08?
Move it.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those resolutions? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeGiorno,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Alvagore.
Yes.
All right, board forum. So let's see. I'm going to start with Mrs. Cooper.
Oh, thank you so much. Not really much to say tonight. I thought the presentation was very good and to the point, and thank you so much for clarifying a lot of that federal stimulus money. I know it's super confusing. And have a good holiday weekend, everybody.
David.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Mr. Palvino for his continued communication to us. I know I've had some inquiries for him, and his plate is full. And I was reminded of that this morning with the robocall that we got at the start of the day. So I really appreciate the updates every day. And like I said, the continued communication and the timeliness of it. It's very helpful, and it's very helpful to our families as well for the communication that goes to them. And I wanted to echo, Robin, your comments regarding the work of the policy committee, because that's tremendous. And it is central to what the board is responsible for in terms of governance. So I really appreciate that, and the members of the board who serve on that committee as well. And I wanted to also thank our community for supporting our budget. And I look forward, lastly, to the high school music concert tomorrow night. And that's it for me.
Very nice. Lynn.
Everything everybody said, I agree with them. And I also just want to thank Mr. Polvino and his team for being so transparent to the community for everything. Not just a couple items, but you make sure everyone has an understanding of what we do as a board and what you do as a school district. So thank you for that.
And I'm not certain, but Sam, are you here this evening?
Sam is playing baseball if that T-storm didn't make it through here. So I talked to Sam last night, and I believe they're still playing. Is that right,
All
Ms.
right.
Charles?
I just wanted.
Yeah, they're still down there.
All right. Brenda.
Yeah, everyone's touched base on some of the things I was going to say. I'm just very thankful for Mr. Palvino and all the information that he's been throwing out and everything that you and your team have been going through lately. I'm really sad to see what had happened this morning at our school, but also so thankful for technology and the fact that you and our students can switch over so quickly at such short notice. And it seems like in the last week, the high school has had to switch to online learning twice. So thanks to all the students out there who are very patient with us and willing to go that extra step with us. So technology is a good thing. I want to thank all of our voters who came out to support us for our budget. And I'm looking forward to working with Jess and Jen. It is bittersweet that we will be losing two very wonderful board members who have worked on a lot of committees, but I think that moving forward, we're going to have a pretty strong board again. So thank you to everybody who came out for that. One quick question, I'm just wondering, because maybe I've missed it in the updates, but the plan for graduation, have you made that yet? How many ceremonies we can have, where it's going to be held?
Yeah, I believe Ms. Parkhurst is, I think the surveys and all the surveys of the commitments to the couple different options that the graduation committee was doing. We're finalizing this week. I think she was down to 20 kids left that they hadn't gotten a commitment to either a drive up or a in-person. And where fingers are crossed, we want that number to get bigger than 500. We know we have a number in our head that we'd like it to be. And hopefully it'll approach 800. That would be a really nice number. Right now it's 500 without doing testing. So I would say early next week, we can give you a summary of where we're at. We'll get out like Wednesday. Wednesday we can have that out. And I know she's already been doing things with families and things like that. So
and was that for down on the field again this year and the drive up, or were you planning the war memorial?
No, my understanding is there was two options from that committee. One was the drive up like we did with the special ceremonies up on Gillard, and then the other option was for in person. And the number of students who select based on that will drive either one or two ceremonies depending on the numbers on the field.
On the field, okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to that update. And everybody enjoy your long weekend this weekend.
Nick.
I want to thank Mr. Palvino for the federal stimulus update, as well as his leadership on the policy committee. I've had the opportunity to serve on that committee for the 3 years that I've been on the board, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Tim.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to thank Brian for the update. I still think they're making too much on how to spend the money. I know how to spend it. Happy birthday to Phelan this weekend. I wish more people, I'm glad on who turned out to vote, but I'm disappointed in who didn't vote. I think we can do better. And I think we should put it on the boards in front of the schools that it's vote today. I noticed that on election day.
Yeah, we'll take care of that, Tim.
And that's it.
Well, boy, I'll tell you, that's a good observation, Tim, about reminding people to vote. That's a really good observation. Thank you for that. I want to echo everyone's comments. Brenda, you said it very well. We're losing two outstanding board members who've been very active on committees and done a lot of work on behalf of the district. But at the same time, we are receiving two young people, hopefully full of lots of energy. It's always good to have that shot in the arm, and I look forward to working with them as we go forward. Brian, tonight was a lot of information. Very exciting. You're right about the excitement. We all should be excited. Out of all of this hardship and sadness, we have a silver lining, which is an opportunity to do some things for the children of our school district that we never had otherwise would have the money to try to do for. So I am looking forward to what the district puts together and brings to our children. And I'm really looking forward to how that can help our kids grow in a very positive way. So with that said, I am going to ask someone to move item 7.02.
Move it.
Second.
Is there any discussion? The only thing I would like to say is upon passing this, how about a 5-minute break and the board will come back and we'll take care of our work. After we complete that work, we'll come back into public session to close out our meeting. For anybody that attended tonight, if you're out there watching, on behalf of the board, I thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. And I hope that you learned, along with us, interesting information about our school district and what it's trying to do for our students. Okay, Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJolorme,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
and Mrs. Alvagore.
Yes.
All right, I'll see you all in 5 minutes. Thank you.
For my
I am going to ask my colleagues someone to move item 7.03 to
Move
adjourn.
it. Second.
Second.
I didn't hear who moved it. I heard Lynn.
Lynn.
Brenda did.
Oh, Brenda, Lynn.
Brenda. Okay, Brenda and Lynn. All right. Any discussion? And if you want all those in favor, a thumb up or a hand up, and it's unanimous. And we're out of here. Thank you all. It was a pleasure to achieve so much tonight. Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yes, enjoy your weekend.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, John.
Thanks,
Enjoy,
guys.
everyone. Thank you.